It's another interesting time on Triple F, Fact, Face, and Forum. And you know I love to do this with you every week. Today we're talking about something very worrisome to me and to every other person out there. Sexual predators in school. Who do we hold accountable? And I don't know, it's so sad. I find it very disgusting. I'm sorry to use that word. How do you get attracted to a child? Even, I remember I saw a story on the internet then, a 6-month-old baby being raped. I don't get it. I don't get it. So today on the show, we brought someone who is an authority in this field, who will be sharing stories with us and telling us how to manage this situation, how to report the situation. And of course, we have all our segments here today. We're going to the market to find out the prices of crayfish. I don't know that delicacy you want to cook without this particular ingredient. Oh, of course, it's an ingredient. And then on entertainment segment, we have something on promoting fashion brands, Nigerian fashion brands. And you remember last week we talked about industrialization. We also mentioned that industrialization is an enabler of growth and also creates employment opportunities. My name is Nkem Okibi. I know you're missing Peace Isaac Yeriko, but trust me, we're doing this together and we're enjoying ourselves till she comes back on the show. Let's go on the short break. When we return, you'll meet my guest. Stay with us. If you're just joining us, the program is Triple F, reaching you on your #1 station, NTA Lagos Channel 10, the station for excellence. Our focus today on the program is on sexual predators in schools. And I have a guest today that will be telling us all we need to know. She is really grounded. She spent over almost 20 years in this field, in the person of Mrs. Gbemisola Osagiede. You're welcome to Triple F.
Thank you.
I find it very... I don't know what word to use. Very annoying to see people just harass children anyhow, children that are minors. And the first question that comes to mind is, what could be the factors responsible for this?
Thank you. In most cases, when we have issues of sexual abuse, people always blame the victim. But one thing I know is a general thing. We have to talk about the victim, the offender, the background, whether from school, homes, and other in the society. And one thing I've discovered is this: sexual abuse cuts across all strata, in the sense that some feel that it has to do with the female gender alone. No, also the boys. They could be abused. But unfortunately, we turn our other eye, thinking it doesn't exist. So when we're talking about sexual abuse, it's a holistic thing. How can we prevent it? What are the signs? Who are the predators? How can we identify them? And also the punishments. When you do something, when you know that you are accountable for your action, I believe you will think twice before committing an offense. But unfortunately, in that climb, people will always go with a kind of a hit on the palm. And at the end of the day, they may still repeat the action and revisit the same action on the victim again or other victims. At the end of the day, we have a polluted society.
What would you say are the signs to look out for?
The first sign, you mean in the offender or the offended?
The offended.
The offended.
Yes.
The first thing is issue of withdrawal.
Okay.
We've handled so many cases where at the end of when we start interviewing the victim and also the parents or the caregiver, the first thing I would always ask them was, for example, when the child came back from school, in quotes now, what was the child's predisposition to certain things in the home? Was the child withdrawn? Most cases, we just think that, oh, don't bother me. You are running temperature again? No. Find out what happened to the child earlier in the day. Maybe by the time you've gone to work and by the time you are back, at whose mercy is the custody of that child? As a parent or a caregiver, you must find out. And when you see a sign, what would you do? For instance, your child is suddenly withdrawn, or at the sight of a family friend, the child looks withdrawn or runs away when the person is around. Maybe someone you've been really familiar with. The onus lies on you as an adult or a parent or a caregiver to find out what happens. We just tell them that, oh, go and sit down. You started again. No. try and find out why the child is withdrawn. Withdrawal is the first sign. Then the second thing is maybe there is a sudden change in the health status of a victim.
Okay.
Some of them may be running team. Like for example, I did a research yesterday on a particular victim, and the victim complained to the mom that she wasn't feeling fine. I'm not here to cast aspersions, but I wish the mom that was around when the incident happened did not neglect the child. The child was complaining of, take me away from the school, the first thing. And the second thing was, when the child was brought home, she was withdrawn. So by the time the child was withdrawn, what did you do as a follow-up as an adult? And at times, let me warn you, the victim may not really display any sign. Mostly those that have been used to serial kind of abuse.
They've gotten used to it.
They've gotten used to it. And this issue of silence culture is another thing that we have to really, really look into. So sign of withdrawal, then the health status of the victim, and at times the psychological aspect. For example, a child comes to you and starts touching you unduly. You should know that that is a sign. For instance, there was a time I was with a family friend in their car, and the child started touching me unduly, and I said, stop! I kept quiet. When I got to my conscience did not allow me to rest, so I had to report to the parents. Eventually, I was blamed for it. But by the time, like a week after, the child said the same thing on another person. And the father started beating the child and said, this was what Gbemi was complaining about. So we need to look at the actions and inactions of mostly our children, most of those ones within the vulnerable age, 0 to 16. They may not be able to fight for themselves. But one thing we know as our kind of responsibility as adults, caregivers, as teachers, as parents, anyone in the society is this. There's always one thing to look out for in a victim. Withdrawal symptom, health status of the victim, then the disposition, a kind of outburst, emotional outburst, nightmares from a child, like psychological effects on the child. For example, a child shouts from sleep, say, leave me! Don't just say it is the demon. Before you start binding the demon in that child or the victim, find out what happened. The first thing is to, draw the child close to you. I'm using the word child now because adults can protect themselves, in quotes. But at the same time, a child that is vulnerable, the onus lies on you holistically to protect that child. So the first thing is to draw the victim close to you. My dear, what happened? Another sign you should look out for in the child is the use of language or a lingo. When there's some kind of lingo that we have strictly within the bounds of the peers, you won't know what are those signs in the child.
Like a code.
Like a code. Like a kind of code that they use. Like when they say XXX2, it means I've been molested twice.
Wow.
Yes, you may not know. I've really done a lot of researches in this regard, and I've discovered that some of these signs stare us in the face, but we are unable to decipher them. We have a lot of signs in victims, and some of them have stayed with them over the years. But as caregivers, as teachers, as parents, we will not pay enough attention. For instance, I got to a school one day, and from the way the girl was walking, another thing is the walking pattern and the kind of social life being displayed. From the way the girl was walking, I just asked an innocent question. I said, I just looked at her. I said, are you a boy or a girl? And funny enough, she was in school uniform. From the way she was walking, her steps, I knew something was wrong. So the principal and the vice principal, they just looked at themselves. They didn't tell me until the next term that I went there to train the students again. And they told me that the girl was already involved in lesbianism and all that.
Wow. This is what we do on Triple F. We share facts with people that have been in the field, experienced authorities in this field. You see, there's something that came to my mind while I was doing the intro of this program. I was going to think about the factor of communication. We need to learn to love our children. So I was going to put it back to you. How do you report a situation like this for the offended?
Thank you. The first thing I will always say is this. When a child is not raised up in an emotionally balanced environment, or a child that is being brought up in an emotionally volatile environment, one thing we've succeeded in doing as adults, or let me say as parents, is this. You've decided to push the child into the world unprepared, and at the same time vulnerable and wounded, and the child is bound to look for love outside. For example, a child comes from, I always use the word school. You have to work and do
manage
a lot
your
of
school runs and all that.
School runs, couple with school runs. So you can't be with the child or your
all
children all the time. I always tell them 24/7. And one thing I've discovered is this: once the communication gap is there, there's always a kind of vacuum. And that vacuum, the predator will look for that vacuum, which is called access and opportunity. When we talk about safety, I'm still coming to that. So the first thing we should know is this, that how do we get, let me use the word illicit reports from our children. The first thing is, when you are back from work, how friendly are you? No matter how tired you are, you must be able to embrace your child.
Very important.
We should know that COVID is around. Maybe do some kind of watching, observe some form of hygiene. But once you are done, come over to the child and just give the child a kind of
warm hug
or embrace. And while doing it, you must always, mostly when the child is less than 10, you must always draw it to the ears of the child that you are not supposed to give somebody a full hug, mostly an opposite sex. From there, some of our children are so big these days, like an 8-year-old child. You may see the child and think the child is 15. They are well developed, they are in puberty, so to say, stage. And the next thing, the child may hug a man. And once the man feels the tenderness of the chest of a girl, the attraction may be there. The second thing you should know is this: provision. Most cases, when I'm on my way out and I see children asking me, "Auntie, give me 1 naira, give me 2." I will tell, do you know whether I'm a kidnapper or what if I give it to you and you disappear? I will always look for any slight opportunity to educate.
To caution them also.
Caution and also educate them. I may just tell you, it's one thing to caution. It's another thing entirely to educate. I will tell them that, don't do that. You have cautioned. They want to know the reason behind that don't, which we don't establish as adults. Which brings us to the next thing. How do we educate our children to be able to identify, once you see the signs in these predators, how do you stay away? How do you stay away? Don't just tell them when somebody brushes you, the person is a potential pedophile. No, always draw the line.
True, I agree with you. So who do we hold accountable for all of this happening in society?
Thank you. We hold the children accountable. I know this may sound controversial, but I'll tell you the reason. The parents first, or the primary caregivers, we hold everybody in the society responsible. Unfortunately, when we talk about safety, we talk about the school. Trying to push all the responsibilities to the school. Meanwhile, you as a primary caregiver, I say primary as in the first person, the first line of defense for a child, you are as a parent, where you can't take care of a child. As a parent, you don't necessarily have to be the biological parent. If you know that you can't protect the child, why having the custody of that child? That's the question I will always ask our people. So the first thing we can do is this. As a primary caregiver, the first thing is social awareness. How socially aware are you? For instance, some will tell you that child abuse does not exist. Predators live with us. They dine and wine with us. But people don't want to believe. They still want to believe that some of them jumped from the sky, which is a fallacy. They live with us. They are not spirits. They live and dine with us. Some of them even become friendly.
So you are saying they are just around you. There are people that we are close to, people that we know.
People that we know. If you check the data of victims of sexual abuse, no matter how small they are, most cases, out of 10 cases in a day, at least we have acquaintance. That means someone very close to the child, or known to the family, or to the environment where the abuse happened. Acquaintance sexual abuse. Someone that the child will not see and run away from. Someone that the child will not see and... most of them are not mad people. They are not mad. They, in quotes, they are insanely sane. I'm sorry to use the word. They are insane, but they are supposed to be sane, but they are insane. Why would you subject a child to an abuse sexually? It means you are insane. So they live with us. We must live with that consciousness, number one, that these people are in spirits. They live and dine with us. That is number one. And the second thing is this: ignorance. When you talk about ignorance, we ourselves as adults, how much of awareness do we have in terms of the preventive steps that we need to take.
That's the truth, because it's what you know you transfer to the next generation.
You can't give what you don't have.
Oh, true.
Some of them will tell you that, for example, when we started this thing years back, Auntie Gbemi, you want to spoil these children for us? Oh, no, we don't want to hear this. Oh, you are exposing them to sexual abuse. I will tell them, madam, SARS must help us train your child. Now they are the ones begging us to come and talk to them. We all know what is going on these days. Everywhere our children are not safe.
It's alarming.
So ignorance is number one. And one thing is, when people want to get married, the onus lies on them, the intending couple, to be able to sit themselves down and ask themselves some salient questions. Are you psychologically prepared to take up the task of having children? Mostly in this part of the world, where we count so much on, I must have my own children. I'm not praying anyone should be barren, but are you psychologically prepared to take care of that child? You are bringing an innocent soul into the world. Are you prepared to take care of the child spiritually? Because children here, physically, when your child lacks, or when your child is needy or lacks in anything, the child is already vulnerable. Whoever gives money to that child or feeds the child is like, has a kind of trust in that person. So are you prepared? So I'm talking about our preparedness when it comes to consummation of our affairs in this world. Most cases, we are just carried away with fanfares of marriages, weddings, and all that. Look at the yes, I do after the marriage.
Wow. We've been speaking with Gbemisola Osagiede. In fact, I don't even want you to leave the show, actually. You're going to come back on this show because you'll be talking about the punishment. Because it's just one thing for you to talk about this side of the story. What about the punishment for the offender? And before you leave, you sang a song in between this interview. You're going to take that song again so that everyone at home would learn from you today.
Okay. Okay, let me sing this song. It says, shout, run, and report. 3 magic words against bad touch. Shout, run. So you just answer. We are going to, I'm going to.
We're going to do it together.
You just say, shout, run, and report. I composed the song.
Okay.
Because I teach children.
Okay.
So when I say 3 magic words against bad touch, you say, shout, run, and report. And even our viewers, I want you to join us. So 3 magic words against bad touch.
Shout, run, and report.
3 magic words against bad touch.
Shout, run, and report.
Bad touch may happen anywhere.
Shout, run, and report.
Bad touch may happen anytime.
Shout, run, and report.
Shout, run,
and report.
Shout, run,
and report.
Shout, run,
and report.
Shout, run,
and report. Wow, wow, wow. Thank you so much for coming on the program. We'll be speaking with Mrs. Gbemisola Osagiede, a social worker that has been in this field for the past 20 years. Thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you.
And that's the much you can take on this week's edition of Triple F. I'm sure you had a great time. We brought to you a guest that told us a lot of things that we need to know, especially as regards to sexual predators in our schools. Interestingly, she also mentioned that not only the girl child is being harassed, even the boy child too. So we must all look out, all the stakeholders, from the schools, from parents, from you and I, we must protect our own. There's this proverb, there's this Igbo proverb that says, one person does not raise a child, the whole world raises a child. So next time you see any child around you in your neighborhood being harassed, please run to that child and protect the child. And secondly, she talked about communication. You should learn to communicate with your children at the level they understand. The age shouldn't be a problem. She also gave an instance where you understand what the child is going through. If you come back from work or from your business, try and find out how your children's day was. And one of the things I always do for myself personally, I always tell them I had a great day. So they also share how their day was in school. I'm sure that will go a long way to prevent all of these things happening in our society. My name is Nkem Okibe, and you know I love to do this with you every week. So join us next week for another interesting package. Same time, same station. See you then. you.